The African Development Bank is leading a global effort to radically transform agriculture on the continent. Now, the bank is trying to mobilize $1 billion to invest that in upscaling tech that's capable of making the continent as a whole move from being a $35 billion a year importer of food to a powerhouse global exporter. The president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, outlined his vision to our Washington correspondent, Daniel Ryntjes.
You got 70% of Africa's population that's actually depending on agriculture as a source of livelihood. So obviously, if you're going to increase the level of wealth in Africa, we must change everything about that sector. And so my message is basically that agriculture is going to be Africa's biggest wealth creating sector.
So with that in mind, what's your vision for the potential that African agriculture has and the ability to enhance productivity using the latest technology?
Absolutely. You take a look at, God is good to Africa, I mean, we got lots of water, we got lots of sunshine, we got cheap labor, and we got lots of land, lots of very good land. In fact, 65% of all the arable land left in the world that will feed 9 billion people by 2050, it's not in China, it's not in Asia, anywhere in Asia, it's not in Europe, it's not in the United States, it's in Africa. So what Africa does with its agriculture is essentially going to determine the future of food in the world by 2050. And so the key really is, how do we begin to invest in agriculture rightly? How do we raise agricultural productivity? How do we get younger people into agriculture to change this labor composition of the agricultural sector?
Talking of young people entering the agricultural industry, we have a question here from a Zimbabwean farmer. She does the accounting for her family farm in Zimbabwe. She's interested to know more about how she can access international markets.
Mr. Adesina, my question for you is simple. Africa is ready and willing to partake in international markets. What are you doing to include policies that are inclusive for Africa and creating open access to international markets with particular emphasis to the US market?
No, first and foremost, I'm delighted that she is in agriculture, and that she's in agriculture too as a business, which is very good. And she's a young lady, which means that, as a young person, she's really getting into agriculture as a business. But having said that, I will encourage her not just to think about external markets alone. When you think of markets, think local and regional markets. Let me tell you a reason why. The size of the food and agricultural market in Africa by 2030 is going to be worth a whopping $1 trillion US. So if I'm looking to make money, that's where I'm going to be targeting. How do I take advantage of those local, regional markets that are growing very fast? But having said that, that is not to preclude the need to have international trade. Now, for her to be able to export actually to the United States, that's the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which means you can export, but it is duty-free for classes of commodities that they have given. That every time that you're trying to trade outside of Africa, Africa accounts for only 2% of total global trade. And so if you're trying to trade in commodities in which you add value to, you don't have the leveraging power. And so essentially what's going to happen is that they will rake a lot more taxes and tariffs and so on the commodities that you're exporting via escalation of tariffs. And so what I want to say to her is that if she wants to keep exporting, I hope you are exporting value-added products, because for me, the secret of the riches of countries or nations is very clear. The richest nations in the world add value to everything that they produce. But the poorest nations in the world, they don't add value to everything. So I want Africa to add value to all the things that it produces, whether it's mineral, oil, gas, agricultural produce, be at the top of it.